very good evening and a warm welcome to all our viewers to an enriching knowledge series on Facade and Fenestration, Facade and Beyond, presented by TIMEX Bond ACP HCL, Architectural Ideas Personified. Welcome on board for an interactive discussion on Skyline 2525. What is the definition of an efficient facade? What are the iconic facades that changed the skyline? Why does facade need to be more sustainable and appealing? Let us gain more insights from our eminent panel with rich experience from the industry. Joining us today for this perceptive session are Architect Reza Kabul, Principal Architect, ARK, who is also a moderator for today's session, Architect Niteen Parulekar, CMD, NPAPL, Architect Qutub Mandviwala, Principal Architect, Mandviwala Qutub and Associates, Architect Rajeev Trehan, Associate Architect, Architect Hafeez Contractor, Mr. Pankaj Keswani, Managing Director, Alufit India Private Limited. I hope we have a very informative and knowledgeable session. Before we start with the panel discussion, we would like to play a short AV and thereafter, Architect Reza Kabul will be taking the lead. Thank you.
Good evening and welcome to this webinar on Skyline 2525. I have with me a very eminent panel. Let me first introduce each of the panelists. We have Architect Niteen Parulekar of Niteen Parulekar Architects Private Limited. He's been in the business since 1996 and has designed many landmarks in all over the country. The other panelist is Qutub Mandviwala of MQA Architects. He's been in the business since 1992, and he too is a well-known figure in his projects and everything. The other panelist is Rajeev Trehan. He's been with AHC since 1990, and he's been working on major architectural projects all over the country. Last but not the least, Mr. Pankaj Keswani of Alufit. He's been in the business since 1984, and he has been a well-known figure in his field. The webinar, the topic for the webinar is Skyline 2525. So we are going to be looking at the past 25 years, the current date, and the next 25 years to come. What has led to the changes in the facade for the past, what we started 25 years ago and what's going to be there? There are a lot of factors that have been playing, in the sky to change the skyline. One of them is the major thing is your we started urbanizing all our cities, and when the city started urbanizing, we started making high rises, we started using more and more spaces, and when we started doing the high rises, we were forced to start thinking about facades because there were a lot of things that impact a facade, like wind energy, and there are other factors, that is seismic factors. So we had to look at all these factors, and we started, actually thinking about facade. There were new materials that came in. With the coming of technology, we started doing dry fix facades, and there were a lot of changes that came in, and where we are today. Now, what's going to happen in the next 25 years, I would like to discuss with our panelists and get an idea from them what they would what is their thoughts on it. So firstly, I would like to ask Qutub, what are his thoughts on the, facades? Like, he started 1992, so that's almost 25 years. So what is his thoughts when he started, and where are we today?
Hi, everyone. It's nice to be on this panel. Yeah, things have changed dramatically in the last 25 years. So, technically facades, when they started, they were basically used in kind of a more of a treatment, which was done to the buildings. So like what we saw, like a building in Bangalore, which Pankaj kind of showed us, so it was more like a treatment of how you wanted to treat the facades 25 years back. So you had kind of stone cladding, you had kind of different kind of claddings which you were trying to do, and you were struggling because there was no dry fixing which was there. So you were just trying to fix up facades which were there, trying to create a kind of a look and feel to the building. But in the last 25 years, things have changed dramatically. The facades have got disconnected from the overall building today. Today, the number of options that you have is, you have umpteen number of options, and you can treat the building and with the connected spaces from inside out, and the facade starts playing a very important role in that. So what was initially started as treatment, where people used to put blue glass, brown glass, green glass, today it's a more often, it's taken a different step. Today, the facade is not only seen from outside, but the facade is also seen from inside. And how this facade is environmentally connected to the surrounding, its contextual factor to the surrounding areas, and its climatic factor is what today the facade plays an important role. So today the facade has got options, whether it is glass, whether it is cladding, whether it is stone, whether it is metal. So you have a number of options, and you can see where your building is there, how your building is oriented, and what is contextual to that building, and you can use the materials, and what is climatically suitable to the building is where how you start playing the facades today. So today you might not put a facade on every facade, every facet of your building, but depending on where you want to take in the good light and where you don't want to take the heat in, is where you start playing the facade form. You start having fenestrations, you start having fins, you start having different elements which are available to you with technology. And all that you work around, considering the loss of energy, considering the amount of light, considering the kind of heat, and considering the kind of environment that you want to create inside the building. So I think facades have moved a long way, and they are no more just an kind of an element which is there at the exterior, but they are an element which connects the inside to the outside. Thank you.
I remember when initially we started, I became an architect and we started, so we had a lot of projects which came up, like one of them was the TV tower in Mumbai, which had the marble facade, which was fixed on the outside. And then after some time, the marble all started falling off. Then they came up with some kind of a, putting all screws on the facade and trying to hold the marble, but it didn't hold on. So, that was the earlier facade that we had, and then we started evolving and we came to this dry fixing and everything. So, Niteen, what is your take? You've been in business also for a long time. So what is your take on the previous, what we used to do in facades earlier, 25 years ago, and what we are looking at it today?
Well, I think we've come a long way. from where we started. I remember, I think about 20 years back, 25 years back, when we were still in college, we used to admire the BSc building because it was the first curtain wall building in this country, I believe. And we've grown up looking at all the Gothic structures and Art Deco structures in Mumbai. And I'm specifically talking about Mumbai because that's our environment. And I think it was 90s, mid-90s was pretty much lull, significantly lull kind of time. But I think in 2000, we really kicked off in terms of having facade with a lot of focus on, the designs on it. And I think that was purely because we've seen a lot of influx of foreign architects. We've seen a lot of conferences, international conferences being attended by not only architects, but developers and constructors and suppliers. I think all of us have been for these tall building conferences and facade conferences all over the world. And there is definitely that influence and that exposure to our corporate clients and also to their employees and the developers. So what happened was the aspiration levels of the clients, the developers really hit the roof. And we started looking at facades in a different way. We graduated from curtain wall to single skin to DGU, and then of course smart facades in terms of smart glass and also high performance glass. And then we today look at even sandwich panels and fenestrations which are calibrated on the building. We talk a lot about, we've seen that the radical facade and dynamic facade that you see world over. I think we are not far from that. Going forward, I think next 25 years, you'll definitely see that happening in our country. And I'm very optimistic about that. So I think in the last 20 years or 25 years, I think we've moved in terms of design in almost all the cities, the A-class cities. And we've seen that development happening. There is also a lot of consciousness in terms of not just using glass on the facade, but have hard surfaces as well. And a lot of it is happening in Bangalore and South. So going forward, I think that facade or tall buildings have a big future, and I think I'm pretty buoyant and excited about it.
I remember when we started, looking at all these buildings, like BSc was one of them. And then the clients started coming to us with pictures from, overseas, and they started telling us, we want buildings like this. And they were not ready to spend money on it.
Yes.
They just wanted, the facade look. They were not aware of how facades behave and how facades have to be treated. So we started using annealed glass. And there were so many accidents that took place, and later on we had to move to laminated glass and heat strengthened glass and DGUs and everything. So we've been learning from annealed glass to today, and then we have got the frit glass, and we've got now we've got laser printed glass, and so we have all these things come up. So Rajeev, you've done a lot of buildings also in Mumbai, Delhi, everywhere where you've done a lot of glass facade, and you've done other materials as facades. So what is your take on the last 25 years?
I thought I would show a brief presentation to make it more visual, and then we can see it, and then what you talk I think will make maybe a little more have
Please.
Context. So if you're okay, I'll start that.
Please go.
So like we are talking, like Niteen said and like Qutub said, that we are talking about what has happened in the past few decades, what is happening today, and what's going to happen in the future. So we are talking not just buildings, we are also talking about cities. And no city was built in a day, but recently the cities are being built much faster at a faster rate because of the way the economy is and the demand is. So exponentially, everything is getting much faster and much more, economy driven also. There's a lot of demand for things, businesses are growing and things are happening. But if you see how cities started, The older cities were like London, Paris, New York. These were called the cities. So if you see the old cities, if you see the difference, I just wanted to start with, say, New York. If you see New York, long time ago, a few decades back, and now the skyline is different, but it's not radically different, because a lot of it had already been made and built as per some principles and thoughts that they had at that point of time. And then we saw some cities which were slightly built, but a lot of things happened. Like, for example, if you look at Hong Kong was a few decades back, there were buildings, it was a bustling city, but nowhere close to what it is today, which you see on the right. So this thing, when now you go to more remarkable things happened where there was nothing built. Like if you go to Dubai, on the left is the Dubai Marina in 2000. And today, if you see, I think this is what we are looking at. I mean, next 25 years, when we talk of cities, I don't think we are looking at things in isolation, but we are thinking of cities which are going to come up dramatically fast and with a lot of experience and new thinking and thoughts, that are going to go behind them. We have a lot of experience, like Reza, you also said initially, when glass came as a skin and a material, it excited everybody. Everybody wanted glass, but they never understood the safety aspect of glass. And then as they understood, and we went from, just toughening to heat strengthening with lamination, and we understood glass. And then we never understood. We just put dark glass because it looked beautiful, and inside the guy couldn't even sit because it used to be so hot. Then we learned that glass increases the AC load tremendously, which is the biggest energy consumer in the building. So we went in for more research happened, and we had performance glass. There's another city which is in India, which is Gurgaon. This is the one, if you see in 1985, there was nothing there. And if you see today, there are so many buildings, and I've been involved with a lot of them in the city, so I can speak here. In India also, when we had development, now while facades and cities happened, and glass and facade materials and everything is there, there is also a lot of things about economy and infrastructure which also has to fit in to make a city work. We can idealize, we can dream, we can do all that, we are architects. But then there has to be somebody behind who has that money to pay for it and to build it, own it, operate it. So it is, there are lots of things, there are lots of things that go to make a city. Now, if you see, like I said, if you see Paris or you see, London, they started with horse carriages, which is on the left originally. So all the streets were designed, the scale, the distances were all done with that in mind. Then in the 1880s, we got the automobile. It was the biggest, discovery or invention of that time, and cities suddenly started changing drastically till we realized after 100 years down the line that probably it was not the right route to have taken, because today if you see that extreme image on the right on top is what most of the cities look like, chock-a-block with cars. So now the new thoughts which are there, which we have all this experience with us, is what we're going to use and make new cities. We're going to do ports for travel. We've realized that we've been using petrol and we've been using natural resources left, right, center, thinking that there's an unlimited supply of them. But we are not going to have that. So we are learning to harness things. We are learning many things. So what we imagine the new cities to be is, this is taken from some place as a reference, but we know that the cities which will be there will now have to have a lot of sustainable things built into them, into their working, into their systems, into their facades. Now facades, I don't think, there was a way of thinking in the olden days that the facade was what you required structurally, and then you had to play with fenestrations. With the technology, it became just a skin, and that's where we architects got all the flexibility in the world. And Pankaj has done all those types of buildings, which he would also show us now, that where he had glass, then people said, oh, glass is so exciting. Then they said, oh, glass looks so dull, we should have some embellishments on them, we should do this. Oh, glass has members behind, let's do frameless. So we were just playing with glass and all for so many years. But I think now we've realized that it's a language which can be developed much further. And in facade materials, we can do so many things, because we have to now harness energy. We need to do facades which can probably breathe, which can be like biomimicry, which transform, like Niteen said, dynamic facades, which change during the course of the day. So those are the things I think which is what we are looking at. We are looking at, these kind of things which would happen in the future, where we try to limit our carbon footprint. We try to, get in more research. We do digitally printed buildings. We do off-site buildings, modular panels. And we have to get into a completely new generation of thinking for the next 25 years. We have to create new cities which are, nothing like the cities we have seen, but like from, probably we see in science fiction, with pods going, with drones coming in, everybody docks into their apartment, no traffic jams, non-polluting industries are just next to you, that kind of thing. So I see a lot of things happening from what experience all of us have gained working for so long, making some mistakes also. And with all that, I think we are ready to, move into the next generation, provided we have the right kind of financing for that. So I think that's what I wanted to show and say. And we can talk a little more, and you can ask more questions.
Rajeev, that was great insight. I'm really, looking at futuristic, that's great. But all these things come with a cost. So, it has to be, one, it has to be sustainable. The other thing is the cost has to be there, and how deep the pockets the developers have. So let me come to you, Pankaj. Where do you look at the, the facade industry going, since you are one of the pioneer facade contracting companies? So what do you think of the facade in the past, present, and the future? You're on mute.
Sorry, yeah. So just to answer your question, Reza, I think what we're going to see in the future is going to be a lot of more of sustainability as we go along. But having said that, I just want to show with my screen just a couple of shots of where, let's say, where Bangalore was and where India is today, because as we were talking about, where India was 25 years back and where we're going to see India, let's say 25 years hence, and so what we're going to see in the world. So if you'll just bear with me a minute, I'm going to just share screen with some of the buildings. Just give me a minute. Can I just press this? So this was a building that we did in 1995 called Barton Center, and Rajeev was just talking about this, where, sorry, Qutub mentioned this a little earlier. And this is what he said, that, those buildings were just done with wet cladding, and you had challenges when sometimes, a tile fell off, or this was no stone done in those days. So very unique, very new. But as you can see, there was nothing on the facade. It was just simple, straight windows that were installed, recessed, balconies were there, and some mechanical anchored curtain walls. And then as time passed and then progression happened, right, we kind of moved pretty quickly after that. Yeah, we moved, and sometimes things just move a little much quicker than you anticipate. This was what happened in 2000. We did this very futuristic looking project called the iFlex in Bangalore, designed by DSP architects. And this had a lot of, one of those tension rod structures, a curvilinear building, and about 750 panels, with each panel being a different size of glass, which happened in that time. We then moved ahead and, moved into 2005. 5 years down the line, malls started happening. You see a lot of inclined facade, where we were just talking about how things move from clear glass into tinted glass into laminated, and this was one of those instances of soak laminated glass, because we did realize by then, having been in the industry for about 10-15 years, that whenever it's an inclined facade, you need to get into a laminated, because for safety reasons. So this was done then, and then we had a campus in Chennai, which was in 2010, which was designed by Carlos Ott. Again, you know, a lot of glass, a lot of glazing, a lot of, you know, but not new materials that had come in. We were still playing around with glass, but more with high performance glass, like we spoke about, with more energy saving glass as we moved in. And then came 2015. By this time, there was a fair amount of evolution. And Rajeev was talking about this, how we've you know, used stone as well as glass. And this is what currently where, you know, India is more or less at. These are more of the, you see a lot of these buildings happening. You see this even now in Mumbai, that we're doing one of the tall structures, which is the Four Seasons. And you see stone on one side and glass, and what's facing the sea has got a lot of glass. The other side's got stone and glass to complement it. It's a 62-story, 270-meter high structure that's happening. And if you just talk about where we're going ahead a little in the future, you know, this is what we're going to see in the next 10, 15 years. Buildings like these, the Jeddah Towers, it's a 167-story high. This is the Burj Mubarak, which is coming up in Kuwait, which is 234. Sorry, that's 167 floors high, 1,008 meters. And this is the Burj Mubarak in Kuwait, which is 234 floors high, but also 1,007 meters, right? And this is Dubai one, which is about 711 meters. So, you know, in terms of real, currently, what you're going to really see is, this is about 700 meters again, Shimoy and Hong Kong. But the point I was trying to make is that you're going to, there's not going to be a great difference, I think, in terms of heights of building in the world that you're going to see, because we already have the Burj Khalifa at about 828 meters. So what you're going to see is maybe 1,000, 1,050, 1,100 at best. But yeah, in terms of India, we've only got, let's say, the best tallest right now is the 101 Lodhas, which is at about 330 odd meters. Like I said, Four Seasons is at 265, 270. A lot of buildings in the 200 to 300 range. India could see that progression going up to about 600 meters. The world over, you might see about 1,000. But what's going to be of importance to understand here is that we're going to see a lot of sustainable buildings coming in the future. And when I say sustainable, I mean, you know, the facade's going to be dynamic. Niteen just spoke briefly on it. You're going to have the facades working for you. When you would have already seen photovoltaic buildings happening. There you've seen solar panels coming up on buildings, right? So we're going to see facades coming up using photosynthetic to produce natural gas. We're going to see, kinetic facades leveraging wind power, right? Yeah, you've already got smart glass coming. There are a few buildings that we're now working on with View and Sage glass, wherein depending on the time of the day and the heat, it just kind of works for itself, right? You don't be surprised if tomorrow you're going to have, right now we use our smartphones only to control the lighting inside, right? It's going to be, you can start controlling lighting from the outside, right? Using your smartphone. I mean, so there are going to be buildings that would actually be using solar power, which take it in the day, and then in the night, you're going to have these generating street lights, street lighting. This is what we're going to see. We're going to see a lot of emerging of sustainable materials coming onto the facade, right? I mean, 25 years earlier, you had just you talk about glass saying, I'm looking for a blue glass, green glass. No one spoke about energy efficiency. We now talk about LEED buildings. We talk about that. We talk about solar factors. We talk about keeping them under 0.25. But as we go along, it's going to be more intelligent facades with newer materials. And that's my take, and that's what I think you're going to see. Back to you, Reza.
Yeah, Pankaj, you're right. I remember when we started doing buildings, the architect was everything. And the architect was responsible for the facade. He was responsible for the lighting. He was responsible for the elevators. He was responsible for the vertical transport, for everything. And there was no consultants. Today, we're getting into a stage where we've got consultants for everything. So when we have a meeting, we've got, maybe a battery of consultants just on the platform, and everybody comes in with their expertise, and the facade is becoming so intricate and so much happening on the facade that we've got various consultants even on the facade. Niteen, you've done a lot of buildings in Pune, the Eon, and even Bangalore, where you've used different materials. So what is the best material you would like, or what is the material you like to work on the facades?
Well, my favorite material is glass, of course, and it's been there forever, glass, steel, and various metals. But there has been a lot of, evolution in terms of looking at the facade. Facade today has become, sort of like an achievement that you want to display. And with these aspirations of developers and corporates going high, everybody wants an iconic structure. So in one of the projects in Andheri for Parini, I've used dichroic film, where the color keeps changing depending on the position of the viewer. And it has got a digital screen on top. The building was designed for post-production of the Bollywood. And they wanted to cry out loud. So the digital screen really worked in terms of revenue generation as well. And if you see Bitwise in Pune, the building that I designed for a technology company, calibrated the films on the outside after the study of, the solar intake. Eon again is very organic, and the shape of the pods was evolved out of, the need to consume the entire FSI, because the FSI was so high to be utilized that you had to get to an organic shape to do that. So there are several materials and several ways to handle certain projects. It all depends on what kind of project you're looking at. And fortunately, our developers and our corporate companies are very aggressive, and each one has traveled all over the world, and they are very demanding in terms of the iconic value that they want to get out of the building.
Great. Thank you. Rajeev, I would like to ask you, you showed me a lot of these buildings, the futuristic buildings and, whatever buildings you've been doing. What do you think about, these facades that are coming up in India? I mean, what we see abroad, and then we try to get, implement them in India, or we try to Indianize it. What do you see it from the maintenance standpoint and the cost standpoint? And are the developers and the corporates, whoever's building it is, are they ready for that? Do we have the kind of like Pankaj, is he well equipped to take up these kind of projects?
Yeah, I think Reza, I think till some point of time it will be a matter of choice, like you're saying. And when the things are expensive, then only people who are doing buildings for self-use and want to portray and be iconic, they will be spending the money, but not somebody who has to make it just to lease it or sell it off. But gradually, like I said, sustainability will not stay an option. Today it is, do I want to be or not? We are still in that, level. But few years from now, I think there'll be no other option but to be sustainable, because as resources dry up, that'll be the only way. And that point of time, probably we would have done enough research to make these sustainable things paying. They pay for themselves. Like DGU glass initially was very expensive, but then you show the payback period on savings in air conditioning. Gradually, everybody is graduated to that.
I agree with you. I mean, a developer who wants to sell the project may not actually do it, but a developer or maybe a fund who comes in would be interested in that kind of a project, because he's going to be maintaining the building for a long run. And so he's going to look at all these aspects of the, facade, because facade is a very thing, and that is facade is the first thing that you see in a building. And that speaks everything volumes for the, project. So yeah, I think you're right. That would be the next thing. Qutub, let me ask you this. I mean, we see a lot of these buildings, what Rajeev showed, and, Bosco Verticale in Milan, where there are so many, if I'm not mistaken, there are 184 various species of trees on that building. So what do you think? I mean, do you think, is it right for us to do something like that in India? It's an organic facade. It's a facade which is growing. It's a live facade. So do you think, is it the right thing to do in India, and will it be sustainable from the long-term aspect? Will it be maintainable? What is your take on that?
Thank you. Mute.
Qutub, you're mute. Qutub.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize I was mute. So looking at the climatic condition in India, we are mainly a tropical climate, and in tropical climate, it would be amazing to have a building, with this vertical greens which are there. And I don't think that it is so difficult to maintain these buildings. It is as equally, what you need to maintain a glass facade. You have a glass facade, or you have any kind of facade where you have these people coming down and cleaning up the glasses every second day or the third day. Similarly, you just need to maintain the vertical growth or the plantation which is happening on that. Definitely, you need some drip irrigation systems and systems which are there, which are placed. But I don't think that technology is a real rocket science that you can't put it inside the building. And I think it would be real nice that given an opportunity to create a building of that kind, where the building changes, it grows, and maybe with a kind of plantation and the kind of.
Sorry, Qutub, do you think we have that mindset yet? Because
that is the thing. That's exactly what I was coming to.
Yeah, that Bosco Verticale. One second, Qutub. I just because Bosco Verticale, I did a lot of study on that. I went and researched on this thing. So I was told that the trees that are there, there's a special person who knows how much to trim the trees. So whenever you go there, the trees all look the same. Their sizes are the same. And he knows how much to trim and how to maintain it. And
definitely, it is a lot of
yeah.
work. There is a lot of work, but I don't think that it is so difficult. If it's the first one, definitely these things are going to be difficult to find someone who's going to do it. But in due course of time, with time going, I think it is just going to become like when we started with the glass facades, we were not sure how to clean these glass facades. But today these systems have just come into place, and it has become a norm for everything. Similarly, for this kind of things, I think once it starts coming into it, but as you rightly said, or you rightly asked, is the mindset there? So for people in India, people like if you're looking at developers, or if you're looking at people, they are looking at building which is going to look good, and which is going to be kind of a little loud. It's going to be standing out. But when you see the building like this, it is not really. It is a building which is a more sustainable building. It is a building which is going to be very timeless. It's a building which is going to grow on to people. But it is not. It might not be a wow factor on day one. So that is a mindset which people have to accept with this kind of a thing and this kind of building that we are talking of.
Like you've done so many buildings, over the past years that you've been in practice. You must have seen, we do a beautiful facade, we do a beautiful elevation, everything is there. But as the occupants get in, they want to put up a safety grill. Why? Because they say, our kids are not safe, our kids may fall off. And so how do you think, something like that, for a person to accept in Mumbai or in India, are we ready?
Well, it's not that we are not ready, but you have to have that kind of a mindset of a project which is there. You have, as you said that, these kind of buildings, you might not be able to sell it, but you can have a landlord or a leasing which is done where the building is maintained by the owner itself. And the owner takes a lot of pride in maintaining this building. And with time, this starts growing onto people, and people start realizing that these are the kind of buildings that we need in future. So in the initial stages, it's definitely not going to be easy. And if you're going to sell off these build apartments or sell off these kind of premises, then the user comes into the play and the person starts personalizing the space. But these spaces, this kind of building, if it is given out on lease rent or it is given out on maintained by one agency, then you can have the discipline. But if you see today also, there are a number of buildings like, residential buildings in South Bombay, which have got good facades. And if you see these buildings, people at that level of society are maintaining the facade. People are not allowed to put grills. People are not allowed to encroach upon the space outside. People are not allowed to change the facade outside. And slowly and steadily, people have started respecting that the building outside has its own feature, it has its own look, and our space is limited inside, and it's not. We do not have the right to touch the facade on the exterior part. So it is not that we don't have the buildings. We have very nice buildings in South Bombay which are existing today also, and also we have in places like Powai, etc., where buildings are there constructed and people are not allowed to change anything. So I think that format is coming inside. So I don't see it so difficult. I just see that the mindset for accepting a building where it's a green growth which is there happening on the building has to be accepted by the people of the place around it.
I think, as you said, it's the person, because what today the mindset is, whenever a person buys an apartment, he thinks that's my space and I will do anything inside it. He's not bothered about the outside. So we have to change our mindset. The users have to change their mindset, and then we can, actually come up with something and we can maintain it the way it should be. Pankaj, let me ask you, what do you think should be the cost of a good facade? Percentage wise, when you look at a tower or a building or something, what should be the percentage cost of the facade that we are doing for to balance out the construction?
Okay, so I mean, if you really look at it, it differs from city to city, and kind of whether you're looking at a four-sided, completely all sides, are you putting glass, or are you only going to just put it on two elevations, and two elevations you're not going to do it by putting some strip windows or things like that. And why I said depends on city to city, because it works on the ROI principle primarily, right? So maybe, in Bangalore, you might not, the best areas would probably give you anywhere between 75 to 100 rupees per square foot, where the IT industry is currently operating on Outer Ring Road, at Whitefield and those areas. But in Mumbai, around BKC, you'll get anywhere between 250 to 350, depending on the kind of building and what's coming up and what you are in. So what I've observed is that generally, if we are doing a project in Bombay, like the Four Seasons Hotel, for example, the Four Seasons private residence, the cost of the facade vis-a-vis the area to build up, right, is like 2,500 to 3,000 rupees per square foot, because it's just like 182,000 square feet that's coming up, 62 floors high, but the developer is spending close to 60 crores for it. So that, it's completely a different balance altogether. But generally speaking, a good, what I showed you, an Eco World project, which had a lot of stone and glass, and the other one over that, and it had the main elevation has this, the back side has some strip windows and painted surfaces. That works out to about 500 rupees a square foot, right, over the total built-up area. And then you look at something like a Godrej BKC that we did, which had again all-sided, fully glass, double glazed, fins and other drama that was in it. That worked out about $1,000 per square foot on a 1.2 million square feet. We spent about 120 crores. So really it depends on, like I said, the environment, the place, the return on investment that happens. But yes, to get a good facade, I would think that anywhere between 500 to 1,000 would be a nice budget.
And what do you think, if once you hand over the building, do you look at taking a maintenance of that facade as well, or that's it, you've done the building and then you have a period for what's that, yeah, and that's it, yeah, and that's it? Or you're looking at actually maintaining a facade? Because today there are, like we did in our initial years, we did a lot of buildings where we just put the glass, and then after some time the when the occupants came and it started leaking in the monsoon. And, so there was a lot of problems. There was a fight that who's done this thing. So they used to say that the civil contractor is responsible for it because he didn't do the wall straight, or the facade contractor was not right. So do you look at coming in at the maintenance?
So India's evolved a long way. I mean, through those days, because initial days, like you said, there were no facade consultants. There was no one on board. Things were not, there were no structural calculations that were done. And now as time passed, a lot of this has become mandatory. Testing has become mandatory. Working on these facades have become, more like a day-to-day affair. So a lot of engineering has gone into it. We check facades for seismic. We check facades for, wind pressure, 3.5 kPa, right? We've done projects in Bhubaneswar, Calcutta, where Cyclone Palin has hit and nothing has happened to it now. And we've done that recently, 10 years ago. Now, if it was done 25 years ago, one can be quite sure that, we didn't have this technology. Lots of things could have blown off that building, right? So, so coming to that, there is a lot of technology that's gone in now, and you'll have that. To speak on your point about cleaning, well, all the buildings that we work on, it's mandatory to have the cleaning equipment, it goes along with the facade contract, right? And it's a specialist operation, it's a specialist job, and there are specialists for it. So while our job is, let's say, a defects liability period for the work that we've done, which is normally, let's say, between 12 to 24 months onto a building, in case if something goes wrong, we're always responsible. And well, we do give a 10-year back-to-back warranty for anything that could happen, in terms of material or workmanship. The point is that the facades are kept and well maintained by the developers, right? I see projects in Bangalore done by RMZ, Embassy, and they all have these huge parks and prestige and everything. And everybody has their own agencies. They have gondolas on top of the building. It's regularly maintained. And you have these clean facades. And you come back to Bombay again, the same thing holds good. The better buildings in BKC, you'll always have these, cleaning equipments on. And there are specialist vendors who do this work very well. So, well, while we may not take it on, but we do insist that, well, unless there is a facade contractor, a cleaning contractor on board, we can't really do our jobs, because when we do these high-rise structures, like we do 60 floors, every 8 floors, we need to have those restraint pins to be put. And unless that comes in, you can't, take it forward. So we insist that that contract is done along with us, so that there's a good homogeneous together.
Rajeev, what do you think about, we've seen facades, it came from, the initial facades, then we have, sustainable facades where we have the photovoltaic cells, and then now we're looking at a lot of buildings coming up with windmills and wind turbines and, to generate this thing. So are you working on something, which is really futuristic, and you have something on your mind which you'd like to share for the future?
We have lots of things on our mind, but like you said, the budgets right now are not self-sustaining. Like, I'm very keen to use even a simple thing like a photovoltaic cell in glass, which is already there. But right now they are very expensive and they are not efficient enough. The latest research which has happened there, which is still at experimental stages, they managed to do that photovoltaic cell as a clear film, which means you can't see it, but the glass will produce. But I think with a lot of research, these things have to become more efficient in terms of the money you spend on it and in terms of the power they generate. That the buyback, the payback, like he said, ROI, the payback has to be fast enough for a developer or a user to agree to use that material. I think that's a challenge at this point of time. The technologies have all just come in, but I don't think they're becoming affordable at this point to a lot of people. And now I think for some time till this we get through this temporary dip, I think it'll be a little challenge. But I hope I'm very hopeful that next year will be a completely dawn of a new era, and then probably a lot of research will happen, and we will, like I'm saying, 3-4 years or 5 years down the line, this will be the only way we'll do things, but not
Yeah,
today.
I agree, because we have to move with the time and we have to innovate
Yeah.
things and we have to come up with a lot of things. I remember we went to a building where on one of the high-rise conferences, and the facade of a 30-storied building had the photovoltaic cells embedded in the glass. And when we asked them what is the generation of the energy that is there, so he said that it was just, the staircase that was being lit. So there was no answer to the capital cost that was there. So yeah, I think it has to still evolve, and we have to come up with something for the next, with newer and with more innovative things for the facades to be more self-sufficient. Qutub, you are doing a lot of buildings. What do you think about, people talk of, self-sustainable building, that the building has to be totally self-sustainable. You do not require energy from outside. So what do you think about that?
Well, it's a dream come true, as you just put it, that after putting up 2 facades of photovoltaic glasses, you can just, in the present time, you can just lit one staircase, this hall. So it's the same thing, if you are talking of how many, whatever buildings we are talking of, how many panels that we are trying to put on top, or we are trying to make it as sustainable as possible. But we are able to, generate an X amount of energy, which is just used at a certain level. So, as Rajeev put it, that the cost of energy production by using photovoltaic glasses and by using different kind of sources is still so expensive that it is still not becoming economically viable for that. So till we don't have a solution to how to generate this energy, which is going to make it economically viable, to make these buildings which are going to be, totally sustainable. Definitely anyone would love to have a building where maximum energy, if not 100%, is generated by the building itself, and it is not depending on minimum power which is coming from the city or the civic corporation which is there. So we are all awaiting some kind of technology which is going to, we are sure is going to come in. A lot of research must be happening on that and is happening on that. And maybe in near future, we should be having some kind of sources, whether it is wind, whether it is, solar energy, where decent amount of energy is produced, where most of part of the building is converted into sustainable part, and we are dependent on very little source of energy from the outside.
Yeah, I think it's going to be some time before we actually get to, thinking of 0% energy from the outside. Niteen, with the need of growing taller, what do you see the future of facades and, in India, especially when I'm talking in the context, what do you think is the future of the facades and what would be seeing from here on?
Okay, so I'm going to take this just quick 5 minutes on this. Since it is relevant that Mumbai is a place where things are happening, so I just thought that share something that I'm looking at. This is like a wishful thinking. So you can see the transit layout on the left-hand side, which also shows the coastal road and the 7 lines that we have, the metro lines and the trains, the commuting trains, the central, western, and the harbor. The idea is to decongest in future, and I think this is where we are going to go. We will decongest. That doesn't mean that we're going to get the people outside, out of the city, but we are going to relocate them in a fashion that this is going to be a transit-oriented development. So you see those red hotspots on the right-hand side is where the central business districts would be there. And if you know, Bombay was island of 7, mountains or hills, you may say, and these are the places that don't flood. So it makes really sense to do the central business district, or I would say that going further is that create large cluster developments which are not less than 5 acres. And currently there are some 4 or 5 projects that are running in Bombay of this nature. One is, of course, the Bindi Bazaar project, which is about 60 acres. And then Dharavi is there, which is about 500 plus acres. And the other smaller ones are the BDD, Worli project and Naigaon project. But these are too large to handle. So while there could be a bigger master plan, we break it down into smaller parcels of 5 acres. There is already a provision of cluster development, but it is the minimum is 1 acre and 1.5 acre, and you really can't do much on that. The idea here is that we need a trade-off with the developers or the corporate clients, where we say the trade-off would be in higher FSI, which means they would build to the extent of even 8 to 12 FSI. And we are looking at super tall buildings and super tall buildings, which means currently, like Pankaj rightly said, that 300 meters is what we have. So if you see Bombay Skyline, TV tower on the right-hand side, if you see, there's the Kohinoor building on the left. And 300 meters is what we are looking at where Lodha stands. And we still are nowhere near that. The Doordarshan tower is still at 270 meters. And this is what it looks like right now from the ceiling. So this is what is the wishful thinking, the future. I think Rajeev showed some iconic towers. Rajeev showed some iconic towers in other places. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So if you see here, there are high-rise of 300 to 350 meters that would be in the center of any CBD, and I've overlapped the white ones, which would be at the back. I mean, in short, when you see in elevation, it will be a wall of tall buildings, just like Manhattan, and you taper it off on the as you move towards away from the city center, and it go up to 120 to 130 meters, which I presume would be residential buildings. And we should also have a super tall building, 1 or 2 of them, which would reflect the spirit of the city. Bombay again being the financial hub, it needs to really cry out loud in terms of an iconic building that people relate to. So these kind of developments will be done. If you look at the in detail at the grade level, we would create walkways underground, create skywalks, introduce a lot of green spaces, just like the High Line in Manhattan, and also cycle tracks on the elevated walkways. This would release a lot of grade level congestion and encourage people to healthy habits like cycling and even walking to their office spaces. So since this is going to be a transit kind of development, there is also Trans Harbor link that is planned, and if that happens, you would see not only the people from outside coming in here in a very smooth manner and get into their destination of working, but also people from within the city get the opportunity to go to far out places. So I think the transit plan which Bombay currently has in terms of surface and in terms of road and the metro and the trains is fantastic, and it pushes us to really move forward to this aggressive and dynamic kind of development in form of cluster. And that will keep our fraternity, the architects, the developers, the constructors, everyone busy for the next 25 years. So that's what I feel we should look forward to.
Great, Niteen. Thank you. It was real futuristic thinking. I'm really looking forward to it, because out here I've been cycling for the past, biking for the past 4 months, 3 months. Every day I go out biking, and so I'm looking forward to it, and I should be really. It will be a real treat for all the residents of Mumbai.
it is really high time that all of us got busy for long years to come, and this would mean a lot for our industry.
Actually, I would say, you know, we as architects, we just think of individual buildings because the developer is thinking individual. We should just jointly get together and we should start thinking about the city, about the, you know, environment, about everything together, so that we come up, you know, and we make a difference. We, you know, we've got to give back now. We've done a lot of work for so many years. It's been 35 years almost that I've been practicing, and we have to start giving back something to the city. So absolutely. I think that's very good. Thank you very much for that presentation. Let me just go for a quick round of, you know, 30 seconds with everybody. Qutub, what's your take for the future? You're on mute, Qutub.
My take is sustainable contextual architecture. I think exactly what you said, that we need to think about the city. We don't need to think individual. So I think sustainable and contextual architecture is the way to go in the future. We need to think buildings which are contextual to the surrounding, and we need to think how to make our buildings more and more sustainable and how to preserve energy as much as we can.
Thank you. Rajeev.
I think the future is very promising. I think when you look at what we are going to have in the next few years, it's like, you know, you remember that mobile in Star Trek, and everybody couldn't even imagine such a thing could happen. It happened. So I think one is existing cities will see some kind of a development, which may be in smaller pockets and not to that scale. But there'll be new cities which will be completely different for what we have seen so far. And they'll be very promising. I think as an architectural community, we have the right to dream big and see how these things happen. And I think I'm very optimistic about that.
Thank you. Niteen, what's your take on 30 seconds?
Oh, well, I'm very, very optimistic, and you must, after looking at the presentation, you've seen it. So, but I think that there should be a larger participation for architects like us, and bringing in the consultants as well. Like, we have to make things happen. We need to do sustainable development. We are responsible for it. But for example, I showed you the first thing everybody would ask is that the civil aviation will not give permission for such high buildings, and that is because of the, you know, the communication radar that is there in the air traffic controller's office. So there is a solution to it, and if we look at it logically and technically, the high-rise buildings could have these communication, you know, radars, and we could solve those problems that they are facing right now. Here, one building gets an approval for, say, 300-meter height. There's no precedence taken in cognizance of any precedence, such precedence, and we have to reinvent. But I think going forward, the fraternity should come together. Everybody, I think there's a lot of sharing that can happen, and aggressively move forward for a dynamic kind of a development.
Thank you. Pankaj, what's your take on the future?
So I seem to be black sheep here. All architects are the only fabricator around.
But you know, we can dream, but you can actually implement it.
Sure. So, you know, I just echo what I want to echo what the panel spoke about, that sustainability is the way to go ahead in the future. And if I have to speak from the fabrication fraternity, I think we're ready to accept any challenges or do anything that you guys can dream of, right? You know, we shape it is in a way our logo, but I think it speaks for all of us who are actually fabricating and developing something. So to see what happened over 25 years, whatever ball you chucked at us, we can put it into the goal. We gave you what you wanted. The new materials that have been coming in, we've been installing it, putting undercut anchors for granite, panels, different things. So I don't think architects need to be worried whether India has the capability or the infrastructure. We have everything here to do it. And so I think what you're really going to see is a lot of more invention, a lot of more development happening. Like I said, artificial intelligence coming in. you're going to see much more things happening through glass. And, it's all a question of costing. As time passes, things get more innovation, like we spoke about photovoltaic. You'll have these things happening once they're at an affordable level. So I think it's very, very interesting for us to look forward in the future, what we're going to see 10, 15, 20 years hence. Great times. I mean, looking forward.
Thank you. I think looking forward, technology is the most important aspect that would be playing, an important role in all our buildings coming forward. Going forward, the buildings would be talking to each other. Maybe, we don't know what all will be happening, because we came from the era of, the dial phones, the fax machine. Today, fax is obsolete. We've got, everything on our mobiles. We don't know, maybe, something will come up with, with the mobile, something will come up with the buildings. The buildings will talk to each other. And let's see. You never know what's going to happen. Technology can do anything now. I mean, today we are sitting, I'm sitting here in San Francisco, and you guys, you're in Bangalore, you're in Mumbai, and, we are talking, and we never feel that, we are not, physically present. It's the virtual world, it's technology that's brought us together. Anyway, thank you for this excellent insight of yours. Looking forward for the next 25 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Reza. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rajeev. Thank
Okay.
you,
Thank you to our eminent panels for the colossal knowledge shared this evening. A special thanks to our sponsor, TIMEX Bond. We thank our audience that have shown support and tuned in this evening. Until we meet again, stay safe and gear up for the new normal.